Hi, everyone. Welcome back to a new episode of Emerging Brands Podcast with Kelly Bennett. Each week, I talk to a founder, brand builder of a cool emerging brand. This brand in particular has been on my radar because they are in all of my favorite specialty retailers around New York City. Umaimah, the founder and CEO of Paro, is on the podcast today. And thank you so much for being here. I've been looking forward to talking with you for a while now.
Amazing. So happy to be here. Thank you for having me.
You're so welcome. I've seen you in many different specialty retailers, but I picked up your product in Big Night in the
Right.
West Village. And from your packaging, your story, your website, your social, I'm like, I have to interview her. She seems so cool. And I love how you've been building your brand and just watching the evolution. I'm really excited to hear more behind the scenes of how you've built your brand.
Thank you so much for saying that. I really, really appreciate it. It's so funny. I feel like I'm in the opposite end of things. So I'm always looking at things from like a critical perspective of like, what more can I be doing? And so it's nice to have these moments of like celebrating the wins, like how
Yes.
small they might be. So it's been really, really exciting. And I'm so looking forward to the rest of the journey and making it even bigger and better.
I love that. So let's talk about how you started. A bit about your career. I know you have a very unique and cool career as well, and how that transitioned into starting a South Asian pantry company and all your delicious products. So, can you walk us through a bit of your story about how the brand came to be?
Yeah, absolutely. So, a quick background on myself. I actually started off working in finance and was in finance for about 2 years. Absolutely hated it. And, really thought about like those like regular career coaches. What they say is like, think about what you like to do and what you enjoy and like pick a career. And so, I at the time was doing a lot of operations, like in my personal life. Like, I don't know why it was like the summer of all my friends getting married. And I was like, I'm really good with ops and supply chain and logistics of things. And so I started working at an e-commerce company called fab.com back in 2010 or 2012. And that was sort of the beginning of my journey in this like startup ecosystem. And it was, I'd say one of the very first like direct to consumer type websites. We had our own warehouse, we made our own product, worked with a lot of different vendors. And so it sort of kicked off this like operational journey for me. And after that, spent some time working at Google, was at Glossier for 4 years, spent some time at jet.com, and then a personal care company called Bravo Sierra, and really sort of, I'd say, like started to specialize in like the supply chain operations of taking things from 0 to 1, and then also working within this like personal care world as well.
That's a really unique perspective also that you're bringing to a CPG brand, from finance to beauty to also tech. Glossier is known for tech as well, right? And then going into e-commerce. I'm sure that even at the time you're like, this feels maybe kind of random, but I'm going for it. But I'm sure that
Yeah.
now you see, like, okay, this is why I did all these things in my career, because it sounds like
Yeah.
all of those elements play really well into building a CPG brand.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that, I'd say like right before I had joined working at Bravo Sierra, it was pre-launch. It's a men's personal care and grooming brand. I had known that I wanted to do my own thing and I was like sort of dreaming of my own food business, but I thought, like let me sort of go back and work a couple more years, like launch Bravo Sierra and Target and retail and sort of get that experience.
Right.
Don't know if that was like the best idea or not, and like I can share more about that. But I think that, it's one of those things where like, I don't know, the timing is never right to launch your own brand, right? And I think that I kept sort of pushing it off and thinking that like, oh, I have to get this experience first or this experience first. And I think in hindsight, I wish I had actually started earlier and launched it earlier, just given my background and like how excited I was to do something in food and in South Asian food. But yeah, I mean, a lot of people ask me why I didn't launch a personal care brand. And I think for me, it was, for many different reasons of why I started Paro, like always felt this inclination towards food, towards Pakistani food, South Asian food, and wanted to sort of, build something that I hadn't seen before.
Absolutely. And there's definitely a lot of space to create what you created with Paro. So when exactly did the Paro brand start?
Yeah, so officially we launched in 2023, so just last year. It's about 18 months old. I'd say that I started, like, I'll look back at my email and I'll see emails with like random chefs that I started talking about this concept with back from 2021. And I initially had that concept of doing a spice blend company, actually, and I wanted
Oh,
to
okay.
start with spice blends. That was sort of like V1 of Paro. And worked on sort of that concept like behind the scenes as I was working full time. But ultimately, is sort of like going through a lot of different avenues of like product and form factor and what to launch with. And I actually ended up going on a trip to Pakistan with my parents in gosh, when was that? 2022 for a month. And I had gone after 18 years. I hadn't been back. And so it was
Wow.
such a, a breath of fresh air, but it was also this moment where I was like, wait a minute, like I'm overcomplicating this, like at the end of the day, what I really love about this food and what I want to share with others and bring to mainstream America is like just like the ease and simplicity of South Asian cooking and like, sort of what I've grown up with and what we cook at home and really sort of simplify the whole process. And so that was sort of the impetus of what Paro is now, of launching with these three products, which, I think are like true pantry staples.
Thank you for sharing that because I think a lot of founders get really stuck and fixated of like, this was my original idea.
Yeah.
And the grace that you have to give yourself to be flexible and shift sometimes is really challenging. It's like more of like
Yeah.
the inner work that you have to do to
Yeah.
to make that happen. So I would love to hear, how did you allow yourself to explore or shift or, after you maybe told some people, like some chefs you were originally working with, and you were like, actually,
Yeah.
hold on, this is going to change. I would love to hear a little bit more like that because I know I'll personally be sending this to clients that have been going through it
Yeah. And I
in
mean,
this
like,
transition.
yeah, absolutely. And I mean, I think I changed a lot, and I'll go back.
Mm,
I actually was fundraising on this previous concept as well. And I had someone do like design mock-ups. I had done initial V1 branding. Like I did a lot of work on it. And I was just sort of hitting a wall. And I think that what I truly felt was like, I'm really forcing this. Like, this is something that's not happening naturally. Like, I have this food product concept. It was essentially like I was trying to do what I've done with the boxes of Kitchery and Dal, but it was a little bit more complicated in the sense that it was almost like a mini meal kit that was shelf stable. But
okay.
like operationally and logistically, it was really complex. And so as I was and I have an ops background, and even for me, I was just like, this is really, really complex. And so I think for me, I sort of took a step back and said, does it have to be this complicated? Like, what is sort of like the main mission of what I'm trying to do here? And can I accomplish that in other ways that won't be as forceful? And so I think in general, like a rule of thumb that I sort of think about in terms of like even like, meeting with investors or vendors or retailers is like anytime you really have to force it and you're feeling like so much resistant and you're still sort of like going up against that wall, I sort of like take a step back and want to ask myself, like, is this really, is it resistance because I just need to follow up a lot and like that's part of the game? Or is it
Right.
just not the right, it's just not the right form factor, it's not the right concept or whatever. So, I think for me, it really took sort of taking a step back from, what I was working on for about 8 months back then. And then in 2021, did this Pakistan trip with my parents in 2022 and sort of came back with this like breath of fresh air to be like, you know what, I'm going to allow myself to make this change. Like this comes more easier to me and I actually can speak to it in a better way. Like this is what I want Paro to be, at least in the beginning. And I think even like as I think about the products we launched, like the Tarka it was never on any deck. Like it was never a concept actually. Like that product really came out really organically. I was hosting a lot of community dinners that summer in 21 when I was living in LA, and I just kept making fresh tarka, as like the last step or like the initial step when I was cooking. And I had friends just sort of say like, what is this thing that you're doing at the end? Can I dip my bread or my naan just in this? It's so good. And so it just sort of started this concept of, wow, like tarka is such a common cooking technique. It's like, I say like the best part about like a dish, how can I sort of seal that and make it into a jar? And so, again, like just allow yourself to sort of go with the flow and see what happens, and like listen to people, listen to your customer and what people are saying. And more often than not, that's going to lead you in the right direction.
That's an excellent point. And again, touching upon the mental shifts we have to make while being a founder, entrepreneur, and being okay with the changes and the shifts that come with this wild ride that we sign up for called
Yeah.
entrepreneurship. And I appreciate you saying that, because to me that's like very relatable, and so many founders feel that. I would love to hear a bit more too of how you spoke with chefs, and you said hosted community dinners. Was that part of the strategy of flushing out the concept, maybe getting some early adapters to the brand? I would love to hear a little bit of like that 2021 to 23 of launching, some behind the scenes of how you went about building that brand in the beginning.
Yeah, absolutely. So I actually started honestly on Craigslist because I didn't have a huge community on Instagram, and I didn't know a lot of food folks and creators, right? Like, I don't know, I wasn't in that world back then. And so I put out an ad looking for a chef who could help me with a South Asian spice blend through Craigslist. And I worked with him for a couple of months. And so, like, honestly, like super OG. Like,
I love that.
right, like now, of course, there's like so many different ways to meet people, and like I've learned a lot along the way. But yeah, I met him on Craigslist, and like he sort of started making the spice blend with me over like the next couple of months. And then when I joined working at Bravo Sierra, I had met someone who sort of started introducing me to like a real chef who was living in India and had helped me with this initial concept. And I still have like a really great recipe for this delicious spice blend, like one day made in my back pocket, like one day I might
Right.
launch it. But I worked for, a good 8 months on it, and it was a, really delicious chicken tikka spice blend. And we essentially did a lot of these community dinners, and it's still, these dinners are still very much part of Paro's, I'd say, like brand and ethos. And for me, it's all about, creating these really intimate settings and inviting, not friends actually, but inviting like people I don't know or a friend of a friend. Like I would love to have you join a Paro party this
Please, I would
summer,
love
and I would
that.
probably ask you like bring someone who doesn't know about Paro, bring someone who doesn't know about me, and like, let's sort of include them into the conversation. But yeah, like really having these intentional, I'd say, like dinners in which I'm able to share the food, get people's opinions. And I think, for me, it's not just about like collecting like data or feedback. It's genuinely just so I can start creating this community. And I think sometimes when building a brand, you do need to go into this like, I don't know if I would call it grassroots, but really small intentional work,
Mhm.
and now I host a Paro party once a month. It's at my house. It's 8 people. Each month it's different people. We sort of have like different questions that we'll ask. It's very, very intentional and like I'd say curated. And I cook all the food, and it's not like chef quality food. I'm a home cook, but it has obviously Paro in it. And the goal is to just create conversations around food and culture and share that with folks. And that's been like a really big piece of Paro that I've focused on. And I think, as I've been building the brand since launch, it's sort of thinking through like community and events across like these Paro parties, but also, creating these I'd say events at a lot of these small specialty stores. So just how you probably found us. And we initially had done like an event with Big Night, which was incredible. I love their team so much. And I did an event at Talia, and I know you had the founder on your podcast recently. And we had Tarka popcorn on a beautiful Sunday in Cobble Hill, and we were sort of sharing that with
Oh,
everyone at their brewery. And then, most recently I was in LA and I did like crispy chicken tenders with Tarka at Swa, which is
so
another really
cool.
a great store in Larchmont. And we're actually hosting our first big, I'd say, like Paro event, a big Paro picnic next Saturday in Prospect Park with a Tarka wing eating contest. So I think you'll
So
have to,
good.
I'll send you the invite. But it's so exciting. And I think like these are the types of events and I'd say like intentional community activations that I think are so important to do as you're building a brand.
I love that that's a big part of your strategy. I used to be creative director, head of brand, and partner of a plant based restaurant. And a big way that we got the word out and cultivated the community, because I had like zero marketing dollars, was all through community activations. And that genuinely carried the growth of the brand, opening up 2 locations, 7 figures, like all the check marks that like you dream of was
Yeah.
really through community building. And so I love, especially for food brands that have that deep rooted fabric of community and gatherings, to me, there's like nothing better.
Yeah, totally. And I
My
think
favorite.
it's I think, it's a couple things. I think you can't really have, I think food, culture, community, they all sort of go hand in hand. And what's really
Absolutely.
incredible about these dinners and events is that, Paro sort of sparks this conversation about like what does food mean to you? What is culture to you? And for me being Pakistani, I've always sort of related to my culture through food and through more than anything else. And so that was sort of like my impetus of even launching Paro to say, I want to share this with everyone, but B, also I see a huge gap in the market of not enough Pakistani representation and not enough sort of these like comfort meals, pantry staples that people can really bring into their everyday diet. I think initially I had always sort of seen like this section of the ethnic aisle, which is called Indian food. And like Indian food is so much more than just Indian food, right? It's like South Asia
Right.
is, there's so many different specific, I'd say like regional foods and whatnot. So I think like it's almost like it goes hand in hand, right? Like these dinners and these events with building Paro. And I love hearing about other cultures too, like, your favorite comfort food growing up and like your favorite recipe from your parents or your siblings or like what do people cook for you when they want to say they love you or they miss you. And so I think it's yeah, I think it's a really great conversation starter and it's a really great way to get to know people.
Absolutely. What has been your strategy of building the brand in retail? Because I know that you're in specialty retailers. Is that something you're currently working on? Because again, a lot of people listening to this podcast, they listen to it to give them that, like, okay, I can figure this out because it's such a wild ride. I would love to hear a little bit more of your strategy of going through the route of specialty and building retail. I know you do D2C as well. Could you give us a little background of that?
Yeah, absolutely. So we launched on Fair really early on, and I
Oh,
think
okay.
I think about specialty stores as another community arm, right? Like
Yes.
I like a Big Night is a huge part of our community. I think that I think that these specialty stores, what I love about them is that you do really feel seen and heard. And I think the team at these stores also genuinely care for every brand they bring in, right? And I think that for me, as I was launching on direct to consumer, which is sort of my bread and butter, and I knew how to do that. But for retail, like that's something that I hadn't done before, and I hadn't done it in food. And so I wanted to sort of be slow and intentional. And launching with these specialty stores allowed me to sort of build a relationship with them and introduce them to what Paro is, and share with them what are the best ways to eat Paro or how can they best communicate to their customers what Paro is. And so I'd say like the first step for me was like building that initial relationship with them and getting Paro into the stores. And then, I love doing a lot of these store activations and demos. Like I get to meet so many people. I get to do so many different, I'd say like share more about the food in those 90 minutes than I would on any ad or any like marketing email. And so
Exactly.
I've been doing a lot of these sort of like activations in stores, and I really will just say like I'll bring everything, like right, like my palm, my like plates, like my table and everything, and just set up for 90 minutes and share the food. And it's amazing. Like I did one, last weekend, like I was saying in LA at SWA, and in those 90 minutes, I think we sold 10 jars of tarka. And it was an incredible ROI, but also more than that, like I met someone who, does sales at this big retail brand that I've been wanting to work at. I met someone who's like an incredible like actor, but a part-time like home chef. Like it was just a really great way to sort of meet people and start building relationships with them. And it's really intentional. And so I love doing that. And so we did one at SWA. We, like I said, have this picnic coming up in a week, which will be really exciting. And I think that, one of the strategies that has really helped me with all of these stores is that I spend a lot of time messaging them. Like I'll reach out to them once a month.
Okay.
Um, and have sort of like my own database of what stores we're in and based on location, and I'll reach out to them once a month, if not more, and I'll ask them like what's working, what's not working, how can I help, what are your customers saying, what's selling, what's not selling. And I think that I wish I could be everywhere at once, because I would really just go to every store once a month if I could and do demos. But I do spend that like time sort of engaging with them and connecting with them. And I think that's really important. And that personal relationship with a specialty store, you can't really do that once you're in a big retailer.
Exactly. And I think, again, you touched upon something really important of checking in. And I'm
Mhm.
sure the fact that you take literally 5 minutes, it could be to like be like, hi, checking in, what's right. I'm sure your name and your brand gets to the top of the list
Yeah.
just because it's enjoyable to work with you, and they see that you really care and that you're putting in effort and you're willing to come and demo and do the whole thing. So I'm sure that alone is really appreciated from your retail partners.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I'd say like, because we're still small, we're not with a distributor yet. I'm not with a Unify or KeHE. A lot of these specialty stores will actually buy through those distributors, and we're only on Fair. And so one of the other things I've noticed is that like these stores will go through their sets of reordering and they won't reorder Paro, but not because they don't want to, but just because they're sort of using their scan gun and ordering through KeHE or UNFI, and they haven't remember that Paro is on Fair and not on these distributors. And so like, even last week I was doing store visits in LA, and I went to one in Culver City and I couldn't find Paro on the shelf. And, he was like, oh yeah, like we just did a big order with, I forgot the distributor, like an LA distributor. Like if you're not on there, then we wouldn't have caught you. And like now that you've come in and told us that you're unfair, like I'll remind our buyer. So I think that it's I think it's also like putting yourself in in their shoes of these like small specialty stores of,
Right.
it's also still a small team that's managing them. And so I try to help as much as I can, or if I have like a big unlock with like, oh, this messaging with Tarka is really working, I'll sort of message it in my next monthly email or monthly DM and say like, I've been using so and so phrase and it's really been like helping, like try that out next time someone asks you about what it is.
Again, you are just full of incredible, tactful, low lift, but high impact advice. Like, I can't wait to share this interview with every client and just everyone I know, because again, it's getting back to like those basic principles of communication and checking in and building relationships that really work. And I think
Yeah.
sometimes we get lost in all the fancier stuff that we could be doing, which is great and has a time and place, but also your operational skill set is really like that to me is just like that practical ops, refining, building relationships. That is such an advantage that you're bringing to the table in your brand.
Thank you. I mean, I can't say all this without mentioning the fact that it takes a lot of time. Like,
Sure.
I have I have a dinner next week and the Paro picnic, and it's a lot of time for a one woman show, and it's like a scrambling. It's last minute. It's certainly not easy, but I have been trying really hard to sort of like set these like weekly goals or like prioritize or like time box. Like every Tuesday for 3 hours, I'm going to reach out to every single store or whatever that is. And so I think that helps. And then I'm honestly always looking and reaching out to people for activations or for partnerships. Like if I see, a new brand, I think one of the other ways that we've grown is by doing these partnerships, like recipe collabs with other
Right.
brands. And so I think that's really fun because I love seeing other emerging brands and I love meeting new founders. And so it's a great way to sort of connect with them, but then also be like, hey, I really love what you're doing. I'm doing this. Like, let's do something together. And that, like, I think sort of understanding like the KPI that you're expecting out of each of them, like for me, when I do a
Right.
recipe deal with like Heyday or Ziba Foods, I'm not going to expect like a huge like revenue outcome, but I am going to expect hopefully like reaching a new audience or reaching a new customer and building a new relationship. And so I try to sort of think about yeah, what is the goal of each marketing sort of activation?
Love it. That's a perfect way to close. I was going to ask you what advice you would share, but you shared so much advice throughout that
Great.
I'm going to make a list and be like, here are all the top recommendations of advice. So I'll close on the most important question. Where can people shop Paro?
Sorry, just got to spill my coffee. We are direct to consumer, so from paro.com, and we're in about 90, maybe 100 small specialty stores now. You can find all the stores through our store locator on our website. And then the big news is also that we're launching in Fairway. So I just delivered.
Wow.
Yeah, it's really exciting.
Congratulations.
You're hearing it first. I haven't even shared it on
Oh my
social media.
gosh. We have an exclusive. I'm so honored.
You'll have to tell me when this goes live, but
I will.
yeah, so it's really exciting. Actually, nationally, New York was a huge sort of help in that. I think, the last sort of piece of advice is like there are so many incredible resources, regardless of what city you're in, just like of people sort of helping others, whether it's Black communities, whether it's folks like Nationally New York. I know they have one in Chicago and LA.
Right.
And so I really like look at everything everyone posts and I'm like, what could I do? What can I say yes to? What can I apply to? And so they had done like a Fairway pitch competition. And so excuse me, I had done that. And so yeah, it's really exciting. So we'll be in Fairway. It's just getting set onto their shelves this week. So hopefully by next week, everyone will be able to go in and purchase through Fairway.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
That's major. Major. Well, it was a pleasure to talk with you. I literally could talk to you for hours. Please let me know about the upcoming dinners. I would love to go. And I just thank you so much for sharing so honestly and authentically about your journey. And everyone, go shop Paro. And that's a wrap for this episode. I'll see everyone next week. And thanks for listening. Bye.